Hello, bonjour, shalom, and welcome to Hi There.
A culturally Jewish podcast powered by AJN.
Hi There, like Hi There, but with a little more life in it.
18 times more life, technically.
I'm David.
And I'm Addie, and each week we sit down with interesting people to talk about culture, identity, and the stories that shape us.
Today's guest is a musician whose work lives somewhere between songwriting, spirituality, and asking really big questions. Addie, you're a bit younger than me, but do you enjoy folk music at all?
I actually do. I've gone to the Edmonton Folk Fest and the Canmore Folk Fest a lot growing up, so folk music was always it always had this homey feeling for me. What about you?
I grew up listening to Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell. My mom had this old recorder she would play all their songs on. So it's definitely stuck with me throughout life, and it's something I even love listening to modern folk music. Surprisingly, I've never gone down to the Calgary Folk Film Festival. It usually rains a lot, and I don't feel like being stuck out in mud and swampland while people are playing music.
Valid. It's not a really good mix. You probably just want to be sitting there enjoying the music and not worrying if you're going to get dirty or not.
I'd rather listen to all that great music at home while I'm cooking dinner.
Valid. We're joined by Ezra Ben-Shalom, an acclaimed Canadian singer-songwriter whose recent work draws deeply from Jewish tradition, ancestry, and the search for meaning.
His music explores the known, the unknown, and probably a few things your rabbi warned you would be difficult to explain at a dinner party.
Fair.
We talk with Ezra about music, Jewish identity, creativity, and what happens when art becomes a way of wrestling with life's biggest questions.
So, here's our conversation with Ezra Ben-Shalom.
With Ezra's permission, we are featuring several of his songs in this week's edition.
I was in the temple, kneeling in the sand. The devil came by to take my hand. The cornerstone laid so long ago was dust in the wind that began to blow. So there I was in the eye of the storm, still kneeling down in a prayer-like form. And swirling all around me was the things of the past, all turned to dust, none of them could last. Oh no, none of them could last.
Ezra, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, David.
I found out your name literally means helper, son of peace. Now that's quite a bit to live up to. Did you grow into that name, or do you think you're still negotiating with it?
Well, I mean, still negotiating with everything, you know. Life is, I don't know, it's all becoming, you know. It's like if you think you're arrived, then you're probably going to fall, you know, pretty quickly.
I'm just curious, your parents decided on that name, Helper, Son of Peace. Does that reflect who you think you are in your music, in your ideology, in your identity?
My father is Shalom Ben Reuven, and I'm Ezra Ben-Shalom. I mean, that's the name that, you know, when I get called up for an aliyah that I get called up with, I adopted it as like a name to perform this music with, as a stage name, so to speak, you know, and sort of stylized it as a modern last name. But yeah, I mean, that's you know, a name is, it's good to have a name, you know.
Yes, it is quite good to have a name, especially if it's meaningful and reflects you. So because your music is quite unique and different, as I was listening to it for the past few days, when people, if you're at a dinner party, when people ask you what kind of music you make, what's the version that you would sort of say that doesn't result in maybe polite confusion, if I could say that?
I call it folk music, you know, simple as that. I think of it, you know, I grew up very secular, listening to popular music and, you know, like a lot of classic rock or music from the 60s and 70s and so on. So I think of it like in the tradition of other Jewish songwriters like Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen. I don't think that those people or any, like we're all individual people. So, the music is not going to sound like them, but I think it's in their tradition, writing in the same tradition.
Yeah, we had a guest on previously, Dana, who's performing in a show that I saw in Calgary over the weekend that was about Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen and their relationship. So it seems like, she's not the only one. Obviously, this means so much to so many people. These type of artists or songwriters of the folk era. I was going to ask you if there was an artist or a songwriter that, maybe you realize music could carry something deeper than just entertainment. But I think I got my answer with Cohen, unless there's anyone else.
Oh man. Well, music has always meant a lot to me, and there's artists that are Jewish and not Jewish. I went through a phase when I was like 17 for quite a few years, actually, of just being like obsessed by the Beatles and just loving them. Like there's something about their energy and like their joy. And like, I just found it very healing and very uplifting and very good, and there's many artists I love. Like I love the just pure creativity of like Bjork. Like I love how nobody sounds like her, she's so just sounds like herself, and that really inspires me, that somebody can just be so authentically themselves and so courageously themselves, that she really inspires me. Leonard Cohen, I think the way, more than anything, he inspired me is to show me how deep a song can be, how much you can put in a song, how much every word and every line can matter. Sometimes you sit down and you write a song and it flows out and you don't even know what you're trying to say. And then, I might live with that song for a little while and I might demo it and I might start to realize which lines are not adding anything. And that's more than anything, that's how Leonard Cohen has really inspired me. Just to see how layered and deep you can go and how you can mold a song into being something greater than just that original flash of inspiration.
Yeah. Like what did I hear? I heard the story between Cohen and Bob Dylan where I think he asked Bob Dylan, like, how long did it take you to write this song? And Dylan said, it took me like 15 minutes. And then he asked Cohen, how long did it take him to write Hallelujah? And he said, like 15 years, I'm still working on it.
But Bob Dylan, is some kind of a strange, rare genius that, you can just be in awe of and never quite understand. So everybody in their own way, is unique. So, but Cohen's talents and methods are more approachable, I'd say, even if the result is never going to be the same. You know what I mean? I'll never compare myself to him.
Let's talk a little bit about your talents, because you've spoken about your music, but also about reconnecting to Jewish practice in a much deeper way over the last several years. Was there a particular moment when something really shifted in you?
There's this sort of like thread through my life that's ongoing. So, picking a moment is somewhat arbitrary, but there was a moment where Judaism became a path that I accepted and chose to pursue. And it was pretty recent, actually. It was during COVID. It was in the early days of COVID. And I was at a sweat ceremony with a family friend of ours we call him Moose. His name's Ron Hall. He's a biologist and an artist with the Soyuz First Nation. He's a wonderful father and uncle and grandfather, and always been in my family's life since we moved here to Kelowna in the 80s, and always been somebody I admired and looked up to. Anyway, we were at a sweat ceremony. It was very powerful. I won't go into too much detail about it. But after the ceremony, I thanked him and I said, Moose, you're so lucky to have this deep, rich tradition to draw on, to connect so profoundly with your own soul, with the Creator. I said, all I got is this shallow, materialistic Western culture. And he said, Ezra, what are you talking about? You're Jewish. You come from an indigenous people. And it blew my mind. Nobody had ever said that to me before. I never read that in any book. I didn't know how he knew it. Like, I was like, how do you know? Like, what are you talking about? Where'd you get that from? That's what I thought. I didn't say anything. But I knew he was right. And I realized it right away. And if you remember at that time in 2020 or 2021, whenever it was, somewhere around there, what we were all talking about as a country, we were talking about truth and reconciliation. And we were talking as a country about how the indigenous people shouldn't lose their connection to their ancestors, shouldn't lose their stories, their oral tradition, shouldn't lose their language. And, we were all asked to be allies to them, and which is a good thing. I grew up with Moose and his family and with some other friends always had indigenous friends in school. There was always somebody in the class I was friendly with. And I somewhat understood the story and the feelings of that community, and we should be allies with them. I think that was correct. And then here I realized I was being a total hypocrite. I was just totally ignoring my own heritage, my own stories, my own language, my own ancestor connection. Just didn't have it. I didn't have it growing up. There was very few Jewish people where I lived, and I didn't know. I just didn't know. So that really inspired me to say, like, okay, if I'm going to be an ally to indigenous people, then I can't be a hypocrite. I got to know who I am as well. And so I started to connect with Judaism. I had read the King James Bible before, so I knew something about the stories. But what I really discovered is that the light of it, the goodness of it, is actually in the oral tradition. Is, when you read the Chumash with Rashi and with Hasidus, the light that's in these texts really starts to reveal itself, the goodness, and you realize that the text itself is, I love the analogy of the text being like a suitcase for the Jewish people, that we can have our texts and put it in our bag and travel all over the world with it and keep our culture, our civilization. But it's just how we can travel and how we can keep it alive through the centuries. But it's like the Coles notes, you know what I mean? It's just, that's the basis of it, but to keep it. But the oral tradition, every generation, all the light that's shined on it through, the oral law in the Mishnah, through the Kabbalah, the Zohar, the Hasidus, which is so beautiful, so practical, it makes it meaningful and practical. And we're living in such an amazing era where all that stuff is revealed and we have access to it. So I just feel very lucky to be finally receiving the oral tradition, and it's very helpful. It's very good. Yeah.
I like the analogy of the suitcase, that you can take it and this tradition and this heritage with you everywhere you go. And I've spoken to a lot of Jewish people, and the way you talked about it, sort of rediscovering your indigeneity and rediscovering your heritage and your culture. A lot of people, I think, rediscovered it post-October 7th, and that's where it brought a lot of things into focus. I'm curious how that moment might have reshaped how you felt compelled to make it as an artist, too.
That was a very interesting moment. Other things changed in my life, in my family at that time, which is unrelated. So it was a real pivotal moment in so many ways. So I remember that day was Simchat Torah, and I was at the local Chabad, and it was the Chag, it was a holiday, so we didn't have our cell phones or anything like that. But somebody came in to the shul who told us what was going on, so we knew what was going on. And every holiday has its own special mitzvah, right? And the obligation on Simchat Torah is to be joyful, is to dance with the Torah in the street, to have joy. And it was a very, very deep and sad and joy. It was a contradictory joy. You know what I mean? It was just deep. It was like hard, but it was very beautiful. Yeah, very Jewish. And we did it. We were joyful. We were just celebrating the Torah, celebrating our heritage. We were dancing and singing and praying and having such an incredible time. And then the rabbi started giving out challenges, like take on an obligation, to grow and to go deeper. And so the obligation I took on that day was to observe Shabbat halachically, like properly, twice between Simchas Torah and Hanukkah. So I did it the first time, and it was really hard, like I just wasn't prepared, and it was boring. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I really wanted it to be over. But then I learned a lot, and so I was like, okay, what do I need to do to make this good? So I prepared better for the second time, and I did it the second time, and I realized the magic of it, the goodness of it, like what a gift it is. And I've been Shabbos observant ever since that second time. So almost since. It took me, I still had a couple of obligations as a performer, some gigs I had booked on Shabbat here and there. But once those were over, I didn't book anymore.
So, okay, moving forward, you won't book anything on Shabbat, or I'm assuming high holidays or any Jewish holiday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning and growing, but yeah, I'm doing my best to do that. And yeah, no, that's right.
Transform the world, I know, Shekhinah.
And your work also deals with some really big themes, like ancestry, suffering, connection. Are you trying to answer these questions through your music, or mostly just maybe learn how to sit with them?
Well, I named the first album that I put out, Known and Unknown. And I think, I mean, that kind of answers your question. I don't think we do the best we can. One thing that's really wonderful about our tradition, the more I learn and engage with it, is how deep and complex it is, and how accepting it is of the human condition and understanding of the human condition. There's this story that I love that's really means a lot to me. I don't know where it came from, actually. I wish I could reference it and tell you if it's from a midrash or whatever it is, but I can't. Maybe a listener can put it in the comments. You know the story of the golden calf?
Yeah, yes, with Moses.
With Moses, that's right. So Moses comes down with the tablets from the mountain. They're carved by the finger of God, and he smashes the tablets when he sees what's going on. And then he goes back up and gets new ones, right? So those first ones, it said, those ones contained the Torah as it is in heaven, okay? And the ones that we got in the end is like an earthly Torah, right? It's for what? How long ago was that? It was over 3,000 years ago.
Give or take.
Give or take. And it's clear from reading Jewish history and all of our texts that civilization has evolved. Like that, we are getting better as a species. We're going somewhere.
I don't know. That's a very optimistic way of looking at human nature. Some people would say we're getting worse as a species.
Well, in some ways, the problems that have always been there are still there, of course. And then individually, it's we're all learning and growing and meeting our own challenges every day. But I mean, as a species, as a civilization, the rules, the expectations, the level of freedom, and so on. We lived through successive empires, being slaves in Egypt, the Babylonian exile, living under Persian rule, living under Greek and Roman rule, living under Muslim rule, and living under Christianity in Europe, and so on, and then living in America, and so on. You can see that it's getting, of course, there's episodes that are terrible throughout history. I'm not saying everything's getting better and better and everything's perfect all of a sudden, but you can see that generally we're allowed to, carry on and worship the way we want to and have our freedom of religion and so on. Yeah, you can see that things, as bad as they can be from time to time, they've been worse in the past,
Yes, maybe. I'm sure there's some listeners listening right now saying it's getting there again, and the fear of rising anti-Semitism. Even in America, the Golden Land, some people are saying this is a time I've got to get out, and Canadian Jews are even thinking, how long do I stay here? Where would I move to right now? Like these are the thoughts of a lot of Jewish people across this country right now.
I can't believe we're getting to this conversation. I thought this was supposed to be about arts. I don't know. Did I lead it this way?
We'll get right back to the arts in a second.
You know what I would say is, like in the 1930s, the Jewish people have a lot more allies now than we did then, right? We're not completely alone and isolated now. Things are tough. Things are not good. Here's the honest truth. Because I remember now how we got into this conversation was you asked me if I'm trying to answer these questions or if we know the answers.
Yeah.
And here's what I know. We're all frickin' lost. All of us. None of us know. All we can do is try and learn to recognize goodness, try and bring goodness, try and bring out goodness, try and embody goodness and learn goodness, try and recognize it in other people and in ideas, which ideas, help make us stronger as a community, as a society, and which are not good. You got to recognize not good too. But I think to focus on goodness is a good thing, and to recognize that none of us know. The Jewish people don't know. We have a good tradition. We have good stories. We have good liturgy. We have good mitzvahs, all that stuff. It's good, and you can see the good in it. But the end of the day, the ultimate truth, we're all lost. All lost here on this earth. We're all learning together.
I think a lot of people would get a lot out of maybe listening to your music at this particular time, to hear about these known and unknown factors in our lost lives. Now, for your actual work, when you bring these Jewish themes into your music, do you think that feels freeing or vulnerable or risky or a bit of everything right now to be so outwardly Jewish?
This is my job. I take it seriously, to provide value as an artist, to be real, to be authentic. So it just feels like me just trying to do the best I can is what it feels like.
I know you make music with your family, right?
Yeah.
So would you sort of say that when you're making this music with your family, is it beautiful, creative harmony, or does it maybe sometimes feel like a family dinner argument?
This is a new project, releasing folk music as Ezra Ben-Shalom. And it is a solo project, and I do most of it alone. I bring in my family for sessions here and there. Sometimes I have to persuade them in or get lucky to get them in the studio. My brothers are very talented. My daughter is very talented. So I'm lucky to get them in the studio with me if I can. Before this project, the main musical vehicle was a band that we all had together. All my brothers and my daughter and me, and we played for children and for families. So, the themes were different. The mission was the same, but we were approaching it in a different way. It was about, once again, goodness, looking for goodness, recognizing goodness. But it was a lot more lighthearted, a lot of laughter and silliness and fun, which, that's really important stuff too, So, we played together for quite a few years. We got to travel, we got to play in Philadelphia and New York and around Canada. We had a lot of fun and a lot of success. We got to go to the JUNO Awards together as a family.
Oh, nice.
All that kind of stuff. So that was a great project. But, my daughter, she aged out of it. She's a young woman now, and she wants to go find her own way and express herself in her own way. Things happen in life. So that special time that we had together all as a family just reached a natural end. That was also happened right in October 2023. That ended.
Mm-hmm.
So.
As we're talking, I'm thinking about the complexity or the challenge to take these songs that are about being human, not just necessarily being Jewish in a Jewish tradition. And a lot of artists are always trying to navigate between making something very particular, very specific, but also something very universal. How do you navigate that in your music?
I want these songs to live, to have a life. I don't know if you noticed by listening to it, I don't really follow trends of as of right now, I don't really care about the algorithm, and the algorithm doesn't really care about me. That's just how I have to accept things, I'm not really aiming for this moment, or to talk about something topical. The themes and the stories are hopefully have a life, they'll live a long time, and I hope they'll be discovered and mean something to people, and touch them. I think it's a kind of album you can listen to, when you're driving on the highway and you have that time to go deep, or you're in a bathtub, or you're cleaning the house or making dinner or whatever. They're interior songs. They're quite introverted songs. And, I think they're authentic. They're songs that are personal. But I don't think these experiences that I have are unique to me. I think they're human experiences.
When you create these songs, what arrives first? The lyrics, the melody, the spiritual crisis? How does the process actually begin for you?
Spiritual crisis. Yeah, they're all different. Sometimes the music comes first, and sometimes the lyrics are just totally different. And, it's just a musical idea, and it carries something, and I have to discover what it is I'm trying to say or thinking about, or what it is that emotion in the music is. basically I keep a journal. I try and write in it regularly. Sometimes I'll just write like a diary, like this is what happened today, just to keep the practice of writing, just to keep the pen near me and a blank page near me so that I always go back to it and I have that practice. And then, I often will end up expressing myself in a kind of poetry that, not a poetry that I would ever publish, but that tends to be how my thoughts come out, in short phrases, in metaphor. Sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't, but it just tends to come out more in fragments than it does in just like prose, you know what I mean, with good grammar. Mm-hmm. And then, sometimes I'll just comb through and read through and I'll say, wow, that phrase, that line, there's something there, and it'll spark something. Sometimes I'll see patterns, I'll see it's like something happens and I'm struggling with this misunderstanding with a person or whatever it is. Maybe I'll be suffering with it, and I'll have to write just to clear my own mind, just to get it out, so I'm not going over and over my head. And then, maybe a year later, like I'll feel like a similar pattern, or I'll recognize a similar pattern in some completely other situation. And I'll realize that there's something there that's worth exploring, and worth discussing, or worth singing about. There's something that needs healing, like on a human level. Like there's some part of the human condition there or a human pattern that happens that where we're all suffering, that there's something that we can learn about it, we can recognize and we can heal.
Right. You've also worked with artists like Biff Naked and Tegan and Sara. What have those collaborations taught you about your own artistic voice?
They're both very different. I mean, let me start with Tegan and Sara, because we worked with them for, I guess, about a year and a half when my brother Gabriel and I, when we were young, when we were in our early 20s. In a way, they took us under their wing. They brought us out on tour with them as their opening act. And we played for their audiences for like a year and a half around Western Canada, which was amazing. It was before they really blew up. They were still living in British Columbia. This was 2002, 2003. And they are really incredible. What they taught me more than anything else, I mean, they taught me many things, but they were so professional and so focused. They had a vision and they worked hard and they stuck with it. And I can't believe the level of success they've attained. Like, it blows my mind, and they deserve it. They're the real thing. They're really incredible to work with, and it's incredible to see what they've done. Biff Naked is a very special person. She's a unique person, and I admire her greatly. She and her partner, manager, Peter Carroll, they took my brother Gabe and I under their wing when we were young, before we met Tegan and Sara, and they actually signed us to their label. I mean, I was such a young person. I just didn't know anything, didn't know what it meant to be a human being at that time, so it was just a trip. But then we got to connect more recently, like during COVID. They toured through the Okanagan and we reconnected and reestablished a friendship. And she came and visited my recording studio, and we made a song together and collaborated on a song together, which was unbelievable. And she's a unique human being. It's really worth checking out the documentary that just came out about her life. It's on Super Channel. She's a really inspiring person. I can't even really express it. But she's a giver, she gives, and she's genuine, and she really does the job of an artist incredibly well. And it's something that I mentioned earlier about what the job of an artist is: to give, to, and to be real with the audience, to give them something real, and to be generous in that way with their own soul. We all do that in our unique way, but she's really greatly inspired me in that way. She taught me a lot. She taught me a lot about what that means. It's obviously different for me than for her, because we're different people. But the way she does it is really unique and really beautiful.
And before we wrap up, my final question is, what's a question you're sitting with right now in your music, your Jewish life, or just being human that maybe you don't have an answer to?
David, that's a really good question. I mean, look, we're supposed to pray 3 times a day. I'm not quite there yet. I've committed to doing the Chakras prayers every morning, wrap tefillin and do the Chakras prayers.
Better than me.
It's a really nice practice. I love it. And I'm committed to doing Mincha or Marv at least a couple times a week. And every time I go to pray, there's like a moment where I'm like, what? There's a disconnect between the words and then your own understanding of truth and reality, right? Like we use this word in English, we say God. In Hebrew, we have other words for it. And what does it mean? How do you pray to God? Like, what does that word mean even? And, every time I pray, I have to wrestle with it and figure it out. It's not an easy thing. The Jewish practice is not an easy practice,
That is an understatement of the year, of the millennium. It is not an easy practice. And many people struggle with it constantly, including myself. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Ezra Optimistic Ben-Shalom. I wish you well and all the best.
Thank you so much, David. You too.
To the sky beyond the mind, I've come to thank you for the wisdom and the blessings that you bring. But your methods, they are hard when you punish and reward. One moment you are calm, the next you are thundering. In the earth you have given me your body. In the void there is no down, there is no up. Concealed and alone, I will make for you a home. Will stand up underneath the sky and hold my cup.
We're back.
That was thoughtful.
Thoughtful in a way that made me briefly reconsider several of my life's choices.
As intended.
But I love conversations that remind you music can be more than entertainment. It can be a way of asking questions you don't necessarily expect to answer.
And maybe sitting with a little mystery.
Which feels very on brand for this episode, Addie.
Now, here's what's coming up in your community.
For an afternoon of family fun on July 19th, join Jewish Federation of Edmonton for PJJCC Family Fest, taking place at the McQueen Community League.
The Edmonton Heritage Festival is taking place August 1st to 3rd at Horlack Park. Come enjoy the cultures of the world and don't forget to visit the Israel Pavilion.
Mazel Tov. On August 8th, it's Kehilat Shalom's congregational bar mitzvah. All are invited to celebrate the synagogue's 13th year in Calgary. It's not a fundraiser, just a celebration.
On August 9th, Shalom Baby Edmonton turns 5. Join the celebration with a fun-filled afternoon of playground time, spray park fun, crafts, and tasty snacks.
On Thursday, August 13th, the Jewish Family Services Calgary 11th Annual Charity Golf Classic is taking place at the Cottonwood Golf and Country Club. Look out for the Alberta Jewish Newsies on the links.
To hear more of Ezra's music, visit his website, ezrabenshalom.com, or find him on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music. Taking us out, here is Cracked Open My Heart by Ezra Ben-Shalom.
You lied and you prayed and cracked open my heart. Felt it beat in your hands as you took me apart. When you walked away, did you go feeling smart? When you lied and you prayed and cracked open my heart. You broke through my fences, broke open my door. You dragged out my pride to the front of the war. There I surrendered, reborn in the dark. When you lied and you prayed and cracked open my heart. walked away, did you know what you'd done? Did you receive word from the lone Holy One? All I thought I knew was a construct of art. When you lied and you prayed and cracked open my heart. Love is what I wanted always. Was it so hard to give for me? What is stopping you receiving what I need to give?
Hi There is a culturally Jewish podcast powered by AJN. For more news, visit albertaJewishNews.com. Production by Real Mensch Studios.
Take care of yourselves
Take care of each other.
and call your mother.
Hi there.